Good Sunday morning, and welcome to the Wine Guy Mike Show. This week, I've got a historic show on the Wine Guy Mike program. I have my first female winery owner that we've had the opportunity to speak to. Not that I haven't invited others, but, the Kiwis, they're an exuberant lot. And the woman that we're featuring this morning, Miss Paula Ramage, is just tremendous, and I can't wait for you to hear her lovely accent and talk about all the beautiful wines that they produce. This week we're focusing on a wine region that's little known here in the States, from the very South Island of New Zealand. We're going to be talking about the Central Otago region, and Paula is the owner of Waitiri Creek Vineyards, way down south. Paula, welcome to the Wine Guy Mike Show.
Morning, Mike. Kia ora, as we say in New Zealand, and hi, Montana.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just so excited to have you, Paula. As I mentioned a moment ago in the introduction, you are the first, you're the pioneer. We spoke last night, and you used that word, and I think that's just more than appropriate. And I am excited because there's a lot of women getting involved in the world of wine, and you are one of them. And I've been dying to have someone on the show, and most of them have been a little bit timid, but the New Zealanders, no, you guys bungee jump, and you've got the Lord of the Rings down there. I mean, you guys got it all. You got great wine. So Paula, tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of Waitiri Creek.
Sure, Mike. I think it's quite appropriate that you have a New Zealand woman as your first female guest, because after all, we were the first country in the world to give women the vote. So I guess
Perfect.
Historically it shows that we do tend to get out there and perhaps get in people's faces a little bit. We're not shy, even though we're way down at the bottom of the world. We have a very great global view in New Zealand, which means that we're great travellers, and we all travel. Most people in New Zealand have been overseas, in their late teens at least, and many of us just keep travelling. My personal journey has included a number of different careers, but back in 1993 with my then partner, now husband, Alistair Ward, we'd both grown up in Central Otago, and the region was starting to look like it had some viticultural potential, and we decided to purchase our first block of land, which is the Shanna Golden block, which you featured on your fabulous blog this week.
Thank you.
And in those times, the viticultural thinking was that the right grape for that particular block was Chardonnay, which has proven to be an absolutely amazing wine for us. But, of course, within a couple of years, the thinking had shifted completely, and Pinot Noir became the grape on everybody's lips and in their minds. And as a result, in 1996, when we were living in Chile and South America, we purchased another block of land by fax in those days, because of course it was very high tech, and we planted it out in our absence, which means we're using the royal we there. We obviously had our viticultural team do it. So in total, Waitiri Creek has its own home vineyards of just over 8 hectares, which is about 20 acres in American speak. And we also have a little parcel of Gewürztraminer on that block as well. But perhaps I'm a little bit ahead of myself. I should explain that Waitiri is the Maori for thundering or turbulent waters. Wai, W-A-I, means water, and you will see that in a lot of place names in this country, both north and south. And tiri is a little trickier to approximate, but all my research has led to it being turbulent or thunderous, if you like, and we just thought that was a very appropriate name for the vineyard. We're situated in an incredibly breathtakingly beautiful part of New Zealand. We think, of course, it's the most breathtakingly beautiful part, and obviously Peter Jackson agrees, because he's back here at the moment filming The Hobbit. So
that's fantastic.
And
I visualize where you live being similar to our landscape here in Montana. It's a place of extremes here, and glacial lakes and beautiful mountains, and we're getting a little bit of snow. The ski resorts are waiting to open, and so I kind of visualize it being sort of like where you're at, Paula?
I certainly think there'd be similarities. And as I was driving home yesterday and pulled over to talk to you and describe the scene with the lake and the mountains, and you were going, oh, and it sounds a little like Montana for sure. I think New Zealand is a capsule of the most incredibly varied landscapes in actually a very tiny land area compared, of course, to the vastness of the US, and that perhaps is what surprises people most. You can go from the far north, which has these stunningly deserted white sand beaches, and then you have the bush, which is, pristine and, has kauri and kahikatea and all sorts of native trees. And then when you get south, you've got the entire South Island has a backbone of the Southern Alps, and we're known colloquially as the Shaky Isles because of the number of earthquakes we have. And unfortunately, as you may have heard in the States this year, and certainly in the last 12 months, we've been severely dealt to in the South Island, with Christchurch suffering a major quake in September last year, which had no fatalities, staggeringly enough, but then unfortunately that was followed on February the 22nd this year with one which claimed 184 lives and absolutely devastated what was one of the most beautiful cities in the country. And so New Zealand's in a state of sort of massive rebuild and flux at the moment, and that has certainly affected, the numbers of people coming here, and it's really devastated the South Island economy. And of course, we're in a recession. You guys are probably pretty familiar with that as well.
Yeah, we are indeed, Paula.
and we're well into year 4 here. And certainly in the vineyard industry, it's taken quite a toll. A number of companies have shut down, gone under, and for the rest of us, it's an ongoing challenge. But we look to export for that, and that's something that we continue to do.
Well, I'm glad we could have you on the show today and feature some of your wines. And I know you make magnificent wines. I haven't personally tasted them, but I've done a lot of research, and I can tell that there's a lot of TLC that goes into the winemaking at Waitiri Creek. And,
yes, indeed.
And tell us a little bit about the terroir, if you will, of the Waitiri Creek vineyard. What is special about that, and what is special in general about New Zealand wines? Because I find them to be just really very much varietally correct. They're not made in a heavy-handed way. I find them to be very approachable, both price-wise and for the common man who drinks wine
sure.
on an everyday basis. They just seem like they're an easy wine to drink and just so nice. And I know a lot of our winemakers from the States here that focus on cool weather varietal type grapes and winemaking. A lot of them have studied down in the Christchurch area and interned at wineries down in New Zealand. So
sure.
tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, probably best to describe New Zealand to start with. Every other region, every other wine-growing region in the country, from north in the far north through Hawke's Bay, Martinborough, Marlborough, Waipara, all of those regions are maritime regions. So because of their proximity to the coast, they are all affected to some extent by the sea and the weather patterns that abide by it.
And it's a much much warmer climate on the North Island as well, isn't it?
It is. It's more. It has a higher degree of humidity.
Right.
We probably have a little bit more rainfall, and Auckland can be pretty much subtropical.
Because I know that, like the Hawke's Bay region, for instance, they have a focus on Bordeaux blends, Chardonnays, and Syrahs.
Yes, and they make extremely fine ones too, if I may say so. And the Hawke's Bay is renowned the world over. Gisborne is the first place to see the sun in the world, because, of course, we're 20 hours ahead of you. You realise you're talking to the future, don't you?
Yeah, I know. I love that. It kind of messes with my head, Paul, and it doesn't take that much.
No, do you want me to tell you what's going to happen today? No. So the special thing and the unique thing about Central Otago is that we are the only Mediterranean climate in New Zealand. We have a climate of extremes. We get quite a massive shift in diurnal temperature, which means on a daily basis we can start very cool in the morning, single degrees, because we work in Celsius here. And in summer we can get up into the high 30s, which
Wow.
is close to 100. In winter, in Central Otago, the coldest temperature ever measured in Central Otago was minus 21.
Wow.
I've personally experienced minus 14. I'm not that keen to go any lower than that.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So what happens is that we have these incredibly intense summers. They're short, but they are frequently very, very hot. But then they are followed by this beautifully gentle, fabulous ripening period in sort of March, April, which gives us the famous hang time, which is especially suited to producing the premium Pinot Noirs that this region is becoming globally renowned for. To put it on a sort of a geographical basis, Central Otago is on a very similar latitude to Willamette Valley in Oregon and to Burgundy. And in fact, our winemaker, Jen Parr, is an Oregonian native, but she's a very wise woman, and she's bought a place in Central Otago. She's not coming home anytime soon.
That's fantastic.
This is home for her. So at Waitiri Creek, with the two blocks that we have in Gibbston, which is about 20 minutes drive from Queenstown, they are wind-blown glacial alluvial schist. You have to be really careful.
I was going to say
that.
It's early in the morning.
Yeah, it is. It is better than late at night, my friend. I can tell you, I've slipped on that one. And as a result, the land attracts quite a lot of heat, and it also retains it. When we purchased the first block, we did so. It had been viticulturally assessed as very suitable, and in fact, both the blocks we've bought have unique microclimates. They are much warmer than other blocks, even just across the road from them. And they roll down a sort of gentle north-facing hill. You would get that, from that lovely shot on your blog. And we have the Kawerau River, which runs below that. And there's quite a series of rapids on that river. It's used for whitewater rafting and all that canyoning, all those sorts of things.
And what I love about winemaking today is really it's gotten so scientific, if you will. I mean, it's come down to the actual grapes from individual blocks of land within vineyards, and it's fascinating. I mean, as you were saying, you've got one section that's much warmer than the other right across the road from one another, and it's just terroir has gotten that small, if you will, and I love that.
Well, the very first Pinot that we made back in 1999, I called it the breakfast Pinot because you could smell bacon and mushrooms in it, I swear.
I love that. And I love, and the French, and I'm not going to pronounce the word correctly, but they, I had a gentleman, one of the great winemakers from France, Guy Sarton du Chanche, and how's that for early in the morning?
Great name.
and the French talk about having animal in their wine. And I love wines that express a little bit of bacon in them. I mean, it's amazing. I love that. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just had to interject. Okay. I love that.
We go a little further than that. We sometimes use the word feral, but in two particular standout vintages, 02 and 07, I've taken to nicknaming the Pinots. So we had the Grande Dame in 2005, which was colloquially known by my cellar staff as smack because it was so addictive. In 2006, we had Wine Me, Dine Me, Recline Me. And
I want some of that.
Yeah. And 2007 was just dirty sex. it just, and 2008 became the femme fatale. So there is
that is fantastic.
We never put them on the bottle because it's all part of the story that I tell when I'm traveling and I talk to people, and they love it. There's nothing more funny than a room full of excited Canadians running around going, "Oh God, you've got to try some dirty sex."
and
I may have corrupted an entire country.
And I want to talk about the rosé. I'm a huge rosé fan, and And I
Great.
am dying to have some of your rosé. I mean,
Well,
and I know this is rosé that's made specifically to be rosé.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not a saignée. In fact, we've become so pedantic about it that we have single clone, single vineyarded it. It's named for my goddaughter, Harriet Rose Kinnaird, so it's Harriet Rosé. That was a 3 o'clock in the morning eureka moment back in 2004 when we'd had a really, the worst vintage we've ever had. And at that time, you would have been lucky to find a rosé from New Zealand on the shelf in wine stores.
I understand this rosé has a cult-like status.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does. I'm not sure how to explain that. I think it was timing. It's labeling. It's got a very clean, very elegant label. Our actual label is black, which needs, the premium label is black, which needs a bit of a revive and things. But I'm waiting again for the eureka moment. I'm a great believer in inspiration striking when required. I just hope it's still there. But yeah, it's I think what it is that people's perception of rosé, just like their perception of Riesling, was wrong. Until they got the glass in hand, they didn't really get it. And for us, the trick with rosé is that you get that wonderful nose of strawberries and slight sort of cream puff, and then you think it's going to be sweet, and you get this fantastic surprise because it's actually really refreshing, and you're still getting all those berries in the palate, but it's dry.
And I can tell it has beautiful color to it as well.
Yeah, and that has become a tremendous favorite in Hong Kong, of all places. We did get a 90-point rating from Parker a couple of years ago with an amazing review from Neil Martin.
Wow.
Who, had I known, I would never have sent him a bottle. He started the review, or ended the review, by saying that he had to admit that he was not a rosé fan, but that this wine had completely changed his perception, and it was marvelous. So,
well, and that's that's what happens when you have a great rosé.
Yeah,
and especially when it's made specifically to be a rosé, and
absolutely,
and not bled off some other grapes.
No, we don't do saignée. A lot of people have leapt on the bandwagon with that, but for us, when it came to the fruit, which in New Zealand colloquialism was munted and certainly couldn't be used for our premium Pinot, we decided to make the rosé, and just from the get-go, it worked.
Well, I can't wait to try some of that, Paula.
Oh, I'll have to. Gosh, I might have to make a special trip up there, Mike.
Or I might have to make a special trip down there.
You would be very welcome at our cellar door.
Now, I want to talk to you about I want to get all these in before we wrap up, the Riesling. Sure. Tell me a little bit about your Riesling, and I'm really curious about that. One
of the characteristics that comes out in Central Otago whites is a fantastic sort of flinty minerality. It's a real clarity in the expression of the fruit, and our Rieslings are made for the long haul. They are not wines to be drunk in the first sort of 2 years, really, so we tend to hold them back a little. We've just finished our 08. We're about to launch our 09. I have what I call a desert palate, so we make everything below 7 grams residual sugar, which means all our wines are classified as dry. And
that's wonderful.
The Riesling displays, once it starts to age, you get the wonderful hits of citrus and lemon and lime on the nose, and then you also get that in the palate, but it's slightly honeyed, and they've got a beautiful mouthfeel. The acidity, of course, is there because you need that backbone to ensure that they will travel the distance, but, fantastic accompaniments for things like, Thai-baked snapper with coriander and chilies, and just gorgeous, gorgeous wines. And I think always a revelation. People have got the Pinot Noir buzz going for Central Otago, but as well, we're really starting to show some huge merit and getting a lot of acclaim for our Pinot Gris and for our Riesling. And I put that down to the fact that, we're discovering the style that works. People who know wine are obviously enthusiastic about the region and very keen to try anything that comes out of here. And don't be surprised if you see a few more of the aromatic wines coming up apart from Sauvignon Blanc. we only make Sauvignon here in very good years. We leave it to Marlborough. They do
Absolutely.
it so well. Why compete?
Yep. And you know what I want to share with our audience too. I mean, 75% of the vines in New Zealand are not really older than 15 years old. I mean, this is a young winemaking country, even though winemaking dates back to the gold rush era.
That's right.
But there's a new era, and really a lot of the vines were pulled out, as I understand it, from the volume producing wines. The government wanted to focus on wines of quality coming from New Zealand.
Well, it was quite interesting. They actually brought out a guy called Romeo Brigato from Italy in the 1890s, and they tasked him to travel the length and breadth of New Zealand to assess areas suitable for viticultural development. And good old Romeo did this, and at the time said that Central Otago would be, a wonderful wine-growing region, but the government, like most government reports of any merit, the whole thing got shelved and nothing really happened. And we owe our heritage in winemaking to the Dalmatians, the Yugoslavians, and people from that region of Europe who came out here in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, and basically were kauri gum diggers, and they were on the gum fields up north, Kaikoui, Kaitaia, Dargaville, and their influence today still continues. We have the Nobelos, we have the Babbages, we have Villa Maria owned by Sir George Fistanich, and all of these people, the Breakoviches of Kumeu River. We have all these families still involved in the wine industry. The Babbage Winery is the oldest in the country now. I think, if memory serves me, it must be about 93 years old by now.
Wow.
But for most of us, and particularly the Central Otago region, nothing really happened here until the mid-70s. And then it was more kind of hobby growing. People were experimenting, and you've got to have those experimenters. And I think New Zealand is we have that great, what we call the number 8 wire mentality. Nothing's too difficult. If you can't do it one way, you'll find another way to do it. And I think perhaps that's one of the reasons our wines stand out on a global stage. We're not imitators. We don't follow. We probably tend to lead. While we take on board all the traditions of the old world, we're not going to be hamstrung by them. We will do it our way because we know our terroir. We understand the varieties that work. We're still learning, and I think if you're not still learning in any occupation you're in, you might as well quit.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And I think the skill level of the winemakers in New Zealand really is amazing, and I love that your winemaker is from the Willamette Valley. We're pretty close by there, about 9 hours away, and I personally visit the Willamette frequently,
right.
And I love their wines there. And the Walla Walla region that we have in Washington State is producing some amazing wines. The Rheinvan winery produces some of the best Syrahs that I've ever had from anywhere in the world. And so it's exciting that you've got young winemakers and a young wine industry down there, keeping an open mind and being flexible and creative with what you're doing.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of flying winemakers, and that's the beauty. I mean, our very first winemaker actually managed to do 3 vintages in 3 different countries in the same year, which is quite staggering when you consider it. He was in South Africa, he was here, and he was in France. So
that's not a bad way to go. I did a show recently called Endless Summer featuring Paul Hobbs.
Right.
He's in Napa in the summer here in the States, and then down in Argentina in their summer. So it's not a bad gig.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. When we were in South America, we realized that at that time in the mid-90s, the New Zealand winemakers had a huge influence on the cleaning up of the Chilean wine industry. You'll remember the days of antifreeze back in the 80s.
Yes.
Yeah. I one of the things I wanted to do when I came back, I had previously been a lawyer in one of my other lives, and when I returned from there, I wanted to actually import South American wines because they were just stunning. But the bad rap that they'd had because of those scandals in the 80s just meant it never got off the ground. And yet now, of course, everybody's drinking Chilean and thinking they discovered it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah. In the 90s, when I lived in Santiago, but I've still got wines that I've cellared from when we brought back. I'm still sitting on a few sort of Errázuriz and things from the late 80s. So, they're probably due to be broached, I think.
Well, Paula, I just want to say in wrapping up, I mean, it has been such a pleasure having you, and it's so interesting, and I thank you for educating myself and all of our listeners on the Wine Guy Mike show about what's happening down on the South Island of New Zealand. And, we'll be following up with a blog and featuring your wines this weekend.
Right.
And I'm thrilled to have you. It's been a very exciting show, and you're a great guest. But I would like to invite you to come back next year so we can find out what's happening down at Waitiri Creek with the wines. And I'm hoping I get to taste some of those soon, Paula.
Well, we'd love to get back into the U.S., so if anybody out there knows a fantastic importer who's fun and can party like there's no tomorrow when they're on the road, I'm keen.
I may happen to know a couple of those.
Fantastic. Well,
I'm going to be talking to them about your wines, in fact, so...
We have beautiful wines, but as you know, with the three-tier system, America is not an easy market.
No, I know it's
we've
not.
been in there, and people loved our wines. We had our wines were in the French Laundry and in Rubicon and in Michael Mina, so they're at that level. But I had to go over there and hand sell them because my distributors really didn't have a clue. So, as much as I love coming to the States, I'd prefer to come on a slightly more of a holiday basis than not.
We'll have to talk after.
Oh, we will.
After the show. And Paula, it's Wine Wednesday here in the United States, and I know it's Thursday where you're at, but from all of us Thirsty Thursday. That's exactly right. And I hashtag that on Twitter frequently. But I just want to say cheers and thank you for joining us. You've just been a delightful guest, and we want to say happy holidays to everyone down in New Zealand and at Waitiri Creek.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. And back to you guys as well. I guess you're going to be having a white Christmas in Montana. We're hoping for sun and barbecues and lots of fabulous Waitiri Creek wine.
Cheers, Paula. Thanks for joining us. Take
You're
care.
welcome.
I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay.
Bye
Thanks. Now. Bye. Okay.
Bye
Thanks.
now.
Bye. Okay.
Bye
Thanks.
Now.